You wake, perhaps, not in the comfort of a family longhouse, but in a colder, less inviting corner. A space often shared with livestock or other unfortunate souls. Your bed is even rougher, your blankets thinner. Your first task of the day isn't to tend your own fire or prepare your own meal, but to serve others. You are a thrall, a slave in the Norse world, and your existence is defined by labor, obedience, and the constant reminder of your lack of freedom. This is a common historical fact, often overlooked when romanticizing Viking society. Slavery was a fundamental institution, powering much of their economy and daily life. Your muscles ache even before you fully rise, a testament to yesterday's ceaseless labor. Perhaps you spent hours mending fishing nets, or splitting firewood, or tending to the meager crops that cling stubbornly to the rocky soil. Life here in the Norse lands is a relentless cycle of physical exertion, dictated by the unforgiving rhythms of nature. You push yourself up, the straw rustling beneath you, and pull on your rough spun tunic and trousers, layers of wool that offer little true defense against the pervasive chill. Footwear, if you're lucky enough to have proper leather shoes, feels like a luxury. Many make do with simple wraps of cloth or animal hide. Your day begins before anyone else's, and ends long after. You are the first to rise, to fetch water, to tend to the animals, to clean the longhouse, to prepare the fire for your masters. Your hands are perpetually chapped and calloused, your back a constant ache. You eat what you are given, often the scraps or the simplest fare, and you sleep when you are permitted, exhausted by the relentless demands placed upon you. There's no room for complaint, no opportunity for rest until your tasks are complete. Imagine being on call 24/7, but instead of a smartphone, your only notification is a shouted command, and your only payment is continued existence. It certainly makes your worst boss seem like a benevolent overlord. The longhouse, your home, is a marvel of practicality and necessity. Its walls are thick, often made of turf or timber, designed to retain what little heat the central hearth provides. Smoke, a constant presence, curls upwards, eventually finding its way out through a smoke hole in the roof, though much of it lingers, stinging your eyes and coating everything in a fine layer of soot. This is where your family eats, sleeps, works, and gathers. Privacy is a foreign concept. Every cough, every whispered word, every movement is shared. Imagine trying to have a private conversation with your significant other when your entire extended family, and possibly a cow, is within earshot. It certainly adds a unique challenge to relationship building. The reasons for becoming a thrall are varied and often tragic. You might have been captured during a raid, torn from your homeland and family, brought across the sea as plunder. Or perhaps you were born into servitude, your parents and grandparents before you having been thralls. Debt could also lead to thraldom. If you couldn't pay what you owed, you might be forced to sell yourself or your children into slavery. Famine, too, could drive desperate families to sell their own into bondage simply to survive. It's a stark reminder that freedom was a precious commodity, easily lost. Your first task of the day is often to tend the fire. The embers from last night's blaze are carefully coaxed back to life, a precious commodity in a world where warmth means survival. You add more wood, listening to the satisfying crackle as the flames begin to dance, casting flickering shadows across the faces of your waking family. The warmth, when it finally spreads, is a small but profound comfort. It's a focal point, a place to cook, to dry clothes, and to tell stories when the long, dark evenings descend. Your clothing is simple, rough, and often patched, a clear visual marker of your status. You own nothing, not even the clothes on your back, beyond what your master provides. Your movements are restricted. You cannot leave the settlement without permission, and any attempt to escape would be met with severe punishment, perhaps even death. Your life is entirely at the mercy of your owners, their whims and their needs dictating your every action. Breakfast is simple, almost always a variation of porridge made from oats or barley, perhaps with a few dried berries if the harvest was good. Meat is a rarity, reserved for special occasions or after a successful hunt. You eat quickly, fueled by necessity rather than enjoyment, the rough texture of the grain filling your stomach with a meager sense of satisfaction. There's no time for leisurely meals. The day's work begins almost immediately. A little-known detail about Viking age thralls is that their legal status, while dire, wasn't entirely without nuance. While they were considered property, they could, in some cases, accumulate small amounts of personal property. And there were even instances where thralls could buy their freedom, often through years of arduous labor and saving. However, this was a rare and difficult path, and most remained in servitude for their entire lives. Outside, the landscape is stark and beautiful, but also relentlessly challenging. The soil is thin, rocky, and often frozen for much of the year. Farming is a constant struggle against the elements. You might spend hours tilling the land with a simple ard, a primitive plow that merely scratches the surface, or painstakingly removing stones from a field that seems to produce more rocks than crops. The growing season is short, a frantic race against time to coax enough food from the earth to last through the brutal winter months. This constant agricultural struggle is a common historical fact often overshadowed by the image of Viking raiders. Most Vikings were in fact farmers and fishermen, tied to the land and sea for their survival. The work you perform is often the most arduous and undesirable. You might be tasked with clearing new land, a back-breaking job of removing stones and stumps. You might be sent to the forests to fell trees and haul timber, or to the bogs to cut turf for fuel. In the longhouse, you are responsible for the most unpleasant chores, cleaning out the animal stalls, disposing of waste, grinding grain for hours on end. There's no dignity in the labor, only the relentless demand for its completion. If you're a man, your day might involve tending to livestock, sheep, goats, cattle, perhaps a pig or two, or maintaining the longhouse, repairing fences, or crafting tools. Woodworking is a vital skill. Every axe handle, every bow, every plank for a boat must be meticulously shaped by hand. You might also be involved in hunting or fishing, activities that are less about sport and more about putting food on the table. Imagine spending hours on a small, open boat in the frigid North Sea, battling waves and biting winds, just for the chance to catch a few cod. It makes your morning commute seem positively luxurious. The treatment of thralls varied greatly depending on the individual master. Some might be relatively benevolent, providing adequate food and shelter, seeing their thralls as valuable assets to be maintained. Others could be cruel and abusive, inflicting physical punishment, denying food, or working their thralls to death. There was little legal recourse for a thrall. Their master's word was law, and their life held little value in the eyes of society. Imagine being completely dependent on the mood swings of your boss, but your boss also owns you. It's a truly terrible performance review. If you're a woman, your labor is equally demanding, though often confined more to the longhouse and its immediate surroundings. You are responsible for preparing food, often a time-consuming process of grinding grain, kneading dough, and cooking over the open fire. Textile production is another monumental task, from shearing sheep to spinning wool into yarn, then weaving that yarn into cloth. Every piece of clothing worn by your family is the result of countless hours of painstaking effort. You also preserve food, drying fish, salting meat, fermenting milk, to ensure there's enough to eat when fresh provisions are scarce. Childcare, of course, is a constant, demanding duty, often performed while simultaneously carrying out other chores. The concept of leisure time, as we know it, simply doesn't exist. The social hierarchy extends beyond the thralls. Above them are the carls, the free farmers and craftsmen, the backbone of Viking society. These are the people who own their land, their tools, and their own labor. They participate in the things, the assemblies where laws are made and justice is dispensed. They can bear arms and fight in the levees. Their lives, while still hard, are marked by a degree of independence and self-determination that is utterly foreign to a thrall. Even the simplest tasks are fraught with difficulty. Fetching water means a trek to a nearby well or stream, often through snow or mud. Carrying heavy buckets back to the longhouse. There's no running water, no indoor plumbing. Waste disposal is primitive, contributing to the pervasive odors and, more importantly, the spread of disease. A little-known detail is that Viking settlements often had surprisingly sophisticated waste management systems for their time, including designated latrine areas and even rudimentary drainage, though sanitation standards were still far from modern. Above the carls are the jarls, the chieftains and nobles, the wealthy landowners and powerful warriors. These are the leaders, the ones who organize raids, command longships, and hold sway over vast territories. They live in larger, more elaborate longhouses, wear finer clothes, and command the respect and obedience of those below them. Their lives are still subject to the harsh realities of the age, famine, disease, and warfare. But they face these challenges from a position of relative comfort and power. Tool maintenance is crucial. Your axe, your knife, your hammer. These are extensions of your very ability to survive. You spend time sharpening blades, mending handles, and perhaps even forging new tools if you possess the skill of a smith. Metal is precious, often acquired through trade or, for the more adventurous, through raiding. The clang of the hammer on anvil is a familiar sound in many settlements, a rhythmic beat of creation and necessity. Your interactions with those above you are always marked by deference. You lower your gaze, speak only when spoken to, and obey without question. To challenge a carl or a jarl could mean severe punishment, or even death. You learn to be invisible, to move through the longhouse and the settlement performing your duties without drawing undue attention. Your survival often depends on your ability to anticipate your master's needs and to fulfill them without protest. Community is everything. You live in a small, tightly knit settlement, often isolated from others by vast tracts of wilderness or treacherous seas. Everyone relies on everyone else. If your neighbor's harvest fails, it impacts the entire community. If a longship is being built, every able-bodied person contributes. Disputes, when they arise, are often resolved through communal gatherings called things, where laws are recited and judgments rendered. This system, while seemingly democratic, could also lead to protracted feuds, a topic we'll delve into later. The psychological toll of thraldom is immense. The constant humiliation, the lack of agency, the knowledge that your children will likely inherit your bondage. It grinds down the spirit. You might dream of freedom, of escaping back to your homeland, but the reality of your situation is a heavy weight. Hope is a dangerous luxury, and despair is a constant companion. Education, as we understand it, is non-existent. Children learn by doing, by observing their elders, and by participating in the daily chores from a very young age. Boys learn to hunt, fish, and fight. Girls learn to manage the household, spin, and weave. Storytelling is paramount, not just for entertainment, but for transmitting history, law, and cultural values. Sagas, epic poems, and myths are passed down orally, shaping the worldview of each new generation. Imagine your entire historical record being reliant on someone's memory, passed down around a smoky fire. It certainly makes you appreciate Wikipedia. The academic debate still rages about the exact number of thralls in Viking society and their economic impact. While it's clear they played a significant role in agricultural production and other labor-intensive tasks, scholars are still trying to quantify their proportion of the population and the extent to which their labor contributed to Viking wealth and expansion. As the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, you gather back inside the longhouse. The air, though still smoky, feels warmer now, filled with the aroma of the evening meal, perhaps a stew simmering over the fire, or dried fish rehydrating. This is the time for family, for sharing the day's events, for telling stories. The flickering firelight casts dancing shadows on the turf walls, creating an intimate, almost hypnotic atmosphere. Despite the bleakness, small acts of defiance or kindness might occur. A fellow thrall might share a morsel of food. A sympathetic carle might offer a moment of respite, or you might find solace in whispered conversations with others who share your fate. These brief moments of human connection, however fleeting, can be a lifeline in an otherwise desolate existence. Yet, even in these moments of relative peace, the underlying tension of survival is always present. The winter looms large, a specter of cold and hunger. The sea, while providing sustenance, also threatens to claim lives. Raids, though they promise wealth and glory, also carry the risk of death or crippling injury. The very concept of retirement is alien. You work until your body gives out, or until you are no longer able. For some thralls, their skills might offer a path to a slightly better life. A thrall who is a skilled craftsman, a smith, a carpenter, a weaver, might be valued more highly by their master, perhaps even granted slightly better living conditions or more lenient treatment. Their labor is too valuable to be squandered through abuse. However, this doesn't equate to freedom, merely a more comfortable form of bondage. The average lifespan is short, brutally so by modern standards. Infant mortality is high, and many do not live past childhood. Those who survive face a myriad of challenges, disease, accidents, violence, and the sheer physical toll of their demanding lives. If you reach your 40s or 50s, you are considered an elder, a repository of wisdom and experience, but also likely burdened by the aches and pains of a life lived hard. The academic debate still rages about the precise average lifespan of a Viking-era individual, with estimates varying widely, depending on factors like region, social status, and access to resources. But all agree it was significantly lower than today. The concept of honor, so central to Viking warrior culture, is largely denied to thralls. They cannot participate in the assemblies. They cannot bear arms in battle unless specifically ordered to by their master, often in a desperate situation, and their deaths are rarely mourned or celebrated in the sagas. Their lives are lived in the shadows, their contributions essential but unacknowledged. It's like being the unsung hero of a massive project, but instead of a bonus, you get more work. Sleep, when it finally comes, is deep, but often interrupted. The sounds of the longhouse, the shifting of animals, the snores of family members, the crackle of the dying fire are constant. There's no quiet, dark bedroom, no plush mattress. You drift off, perhaps dreaming of a bountiful harvest, a successful raid, or simply a day without the gnawing cold. This is your life, a Viking's life, a constant dance on the edge of survival, where glory is a fleeting whisper against the roar of the wind and the relentless demands of the land. And as you drift deeper into sleep, you can almost feel the rough wool against your skin, smell the smoke in your hair, and hear the distant howl of the wind outside your turf-walled home. When a thrall dies, their body is often disposed of without ceremony, buried in an unmarked grave, or simply left for scavengers. There are no elaborate burial mounds, no grave goods to accompany them into the afterlife. Their existence, in death as in life, is largely forgotten by the wider society. A stark contrast to the elaborate funerals and memorial stones erected for fallen warriors and chieftains. You wake with a different kind of chill today, one that isn't just from the longhouse air, but from the anticipation of the journey ahead. Today, you are to join the crew on a longship, not for a raid, not yet, but for a journey across the open sea to trade or explore new lands. The glory of the Viking often conjures images of fierce warriors, but the reality for most was the sheer terror and immense challenge of navigating the vast, unpredictable ocean. You make your way down to the shore. The salty tang of the sea already sharp in the air, mixing with the familiar scent of tar and damp wood from the ships. The institution of slavery also had a profound impact on the Viking economy and their expansion. The acquisition of thralls through raiding provided a cheap and readily available labor force, allowing for the development of new lands, the maintenance of large estates, and the production of goods for trade. This economic engine was a key factor in the Norse expansion across Europe and beyond. The longship itself is a thing of beauty and engineering marvel, sleek and graceful, designed for speed and shallow drafts, allowing it to navigate both open ocean and winding rivers. But its open design, while efficient for travel and sudden landings, offers little protection from the elements. You step aboard, feeling the slight sway of the vessel even as it rests at anchor. The deck is narrow, cluttered with coiled ropes, spare oars, and the provisions for the journey. There's no comfortable cabin, no private bunk. You will sleep where you can, huddled with your shipmates, exposed to the sky. Remember the concept of honor we talked about earlier. For a thrall, honor was a foreign concept. Their lives were not their own. Their bodies were property, and their futures were dictated by others. This stark reality stands in sharp contrast to the romanticized image of the free, independent Viking. Your life as a thrall is a constant struggle against the physical demands of labor and the psychological burden of servitude. A daily testament to the fact that not all lives in the Viking Age were lived with glory. It's a reminder that even in a world of fierce warriors and bold explorers, there were those whose stories were never told, whose struggles were never celebrated, and whose lives were simply a means to an end for others. As the sun begins to climb, painting the eastern sky with hues of orange and pink, the crew prepares to set sail. The large, square sail, often brightly colored, is unfurled, catching the morning breeze with a snap. The rhythmic creak of the mast and the groan of the timbers become the soundtrack to your journey. You take your place at an oar, your hands already calloused from farm work, but now tasked with a new kind of labor. Even with the sail assisting, rowing is a constant, back-breaking effort, especially when the wind dies or shifts against you. Imagine trying to power a boat the length of a small building, relying solely on muscle power, for days on end. It makes your gym membership seem like a leisurely stroll. You have experienced the bitter cold of the longhouse, the dangers of the sea, the brutality of raids, and the insidious spread of disease. You have realized that survival in the Viking Age was a constant, arduous struggle. You have also understood that your life is not entirely your own, bound by social structures and sometimes the chains of slavery. But there is another enemy, invisible and more persistent than any other, a specter that lurks in the back of your mind, turning each winter into a brutal battle for survival hunger. The glory of the Viking warrior is meaningless when your stomach is empty and the biting cold threatens your every breath. The sea, your new companion, is a fickle mistress. One moment, she can be calm and inviting, reflecting the sky like a vast, shimmering mirror. The next, she can transform into a raging beast, throwing your small vessel about like a toy. You quickly learn to read the subtle signs, the darkening of the horizon, the shifting wind, the changing color of the water. These are your only weather forecasts, and misreading them can mean the difference between life and death. You wake, not to the call of dawn or the rush of work, but to a gnawing hunger, a familiar and terrifying feeling that has become a companion in the cold months. The longhouse, though well protected, does not keep the chill from penetrating to the bone. You look around, seeing the gaunt faces of the family, each bearing the marks of deprivation. It is a well-known but often overlooked historical fact for most Vikings. Starvation was a constant threat, a reality far more devastating than glorious warfare. A common historical fact often overlooked is that Viking longships, despite their formidable reputation, were not designed for comfort. They were built for speed and efficiency, meaning crews endured incredibly harsh conditions. There were no enclosed sleeping quarters, no galley for cooking hot meals regularly, and certainly no onboard latrines. You eat cold, dried provisions, dried fish, hardtack, perhaps some cured meat, washed down with water or sour milk. Staying hydrated is a constant concern, especially on longer voyages. Breakfast, when it was eaten, was a little thin porridge or a tiny piece of dried fish, carefully shared to stretch the meager food supply. Each bite was chewed carefully, swallowed slowly, trying to feel the energy it brought. The taste of the food, though monotonous, was a small comfort in the long days of deprivation. There was no waste, no lavish meals. Everything was carefully calculated, for the slightest mistake could have fatal consequences. Imagine trying to survive the winter with only what you could store from the summer, without supermarkets or refrigerators. It would certainly make you think twice about wasting food. You've faced the elements, the terrors of the sea, the brutality of raid, and the insidious creep of disease. You've learned that survival in the Viking Age is a constant, arduous struggle. But even within this harsh reality, your life is not entirely your own. You are born into a world defined by rigid social structures, a hierarchy that dictates your opportunities, your freedoms, and your very worth. And for many, this meant a life not of glorious independence, but of servitude, bound by the invisible chains of a system that placed some at the very bottom, the thralls. Winter is a harsh time. The land freezes, the seas rage, and fresh food becomes scarce. You spend more time indoors, huddled around a dying fire, trying to keep warm and conserve energy. Stories and legends are told, not just to entertain, but also to soothe fears, to keep spirits up. But even the best stories cannot dispel the hunger or the bitter cold. Your body begins to react to the deprivation. You feel weak, constantly tired. Your muscles atrophy. Your bones become more visible under your skin. You become more susceptible to illness as your immune system weakens due to lack of nutrition. A small wound, a common cold, can become a serious threat when your body doesn't have the strength to fight it off. Hunger is more than just a feeling. It is a gradual, corrosive process that weakens you from the inside. The cold is a constant, biting presence. Even in summer, the North Sea can be unforgiving. The spray from the waves whips over the bow, soaking your clothes, and the wind seems to cut right through your layers of wool. You shiver, huddle closer to your shipmates for shared warmth, and try to keep your mind focused on the task at hand. Your fingers, numb with cold, struggle to maintain their grip on the oar. You learn to appreciate the brief moments when the sun breaks through the clouds, offering a fleeting warmth that feels like a blessing from the gods. A little-known fact is that the Vikings developed many sophisticated food preservation techniques to cope with seasonal famines. They dried fish, salted meat, smoked food, and even fermented some vegetables. These methods not only helped them survive the winter, but also allowed them to carry food on long journeys. However, even with these techniques, a bad harvest or a poor fishing season could lead to disaster. Seasickness is an inevitable companion for many. The constant pitching and rolling of the ship churns your stomach, leaving you weak and miserable. There's no escape, no quiet corner to retreat to. You simply endure, trying to keep down the meager food you've eaten, hoping the feeling will pass. It's a humbling experience, stripping away any romantic notions of seafaring adventure. Finding food becomes a daily, desperate task. You can hunt in the woods, but wild game is scarce and hunting is dangerous. You can try fishing on frozen lakes, but the cold and the risk of falling into the water are too great. Every foraging trip is a gamble with fate, a race against time before the supplies are completely depleted. Navigation is a complex art, relying on a combination of observation, experience, and rudimentary tools. There are no maps as you know them, no GPS. You rely on the sun's position during the day, the stars at night, and the flight patterns of birds. You learn to recognize the subtle changes in the waves, the smell of distant land, the appearance of specific cloud formations. A little-known detail is that Vikings likely used a sunstone, possibly a type of Iceland spar, to help them navigate on cloudy days by polarizing light and revealing the sun's position. Though its exact use and prevalence are still debated, desperation can lead to difficult decisions. You may have to kill your precious pets, animals you have carefully cared for, just to get a few more meals. Or you may have to eat things you would never normally touch: roots, bark, or anything that might provide a little energy. Survival becomes the top priority, overriding any disgust or taboo. Storms are the ultimate test. You watch in terror as the sky darkens, the wind howls, and the waves rise into towering mountains of water. The longship, so graceful in calm waters, now feels impossibly small and vulnerable. You are tossed about, clinging desperately to whatever handhold you can find, the roar of the wind and waves deafening. Every creak of the timbers sounds like the ship is about to break apart. The fear is primal, a cold knot in your stomach that tightens with every crashing wave. You bail water relentlessly, your muscles screaming in protest, knowing that a single lapse could mean the end. Starvation also causes conflict within communities. When resources are scarce, competition increases. Families may fight over fertile land or over access to water sources. Raiding, which was often motivated by the desire for wealth, may now become a desperate need to find food. The communal solidarity that was the foundation of Viking society can be tested to its limits when hunger sets in. The constant exposure to the elements takes its toll. Your skin becomes chapped and windburned, your lips cracked, your hair is matted with salt and grime. Sleep is a luxury, snatched in brief, uncomfortable intervals. Often, while still soaked to the bone, you dream of dry land, of a warm fire, of a meal that isn't cold and tasteless. The camaraderie among the crew is forged in this shared hardship. You rely on each other for survival, for a reassuring word, for a shared laugh to break the tension. If you thought sharing a longhouse with a cow was bad, try sharing a longship with a dozen smelly, seasick warriors for weeks on end. It's truly a bonding experience. Hunger affects not only the body, but the mind. You become irritable, short-tempered, and have difficulty concentrating. The fear of starvation is a terrible psychological burden, causing you to lose sleep and be haunted by thoughts of food. You may find yourself dreaming of lavish feasts, of delicious foods you've never tasted, only to wake up with an empty stomach and a feeling of disappointment. It's like trying to work on an empty stomach, but instead of being able to order food through an app, you have to hunt and gather for yourself. Accidents are common. A sudden lurch of the ship can send you tumbling, resulting in broken bones or worse. A rope snapping under tension can whip across the deck with deadly force. Falling overboard in the frigid waters of the North Atlantic is almost certainly a death sentence. The cold would quickly overwhelm you, pulling you down into the icy depths. Every movement on deck is a calculated risk. Academic debate continues over the extent to which climate change contributed to the famines of the Viking Age. Some historians argue that the medieval warm period facilitated the Viking expansion, while others argue that smaller climatic fluctuations could have caused localized crop failures and famines, prompting migrations and raids. The psychological toll is immense. The endless horizon, the constant motion, the isolation, it can wear down even the strongest mind. You might find yourself staring out at the vastness, wondering if you'll ever see land again, if your family back home is safe. The fear of the unknown, of mythical beasts lurking beneath the waves, of the gods' wrath, adds another layer of anxiety to an already stressful existence. It's enough to make you wish for a nice, quiet desk job, perhaps sorting scrolls in a monastery, though that comes with its own set of risks, as we'll find out later. As winter wears on, and the first signs of spring appear green shoots, birdsong, a glimmer of hope begins to creep in. You know you've survived another winter, a small but significant victory. But recovery is a slow process. Your body needs time to regain its strength, and your mind needs time to heal the scars of deprivation. Famine shaped the Viking way of life in many ways. It drove them to seek out new lands to settle, to find more abundant resources. It was also a powerful motivator behind raiding and trading, as they sought to replenish their supplies at any cost. Their flexibility and adaptability, which were the hallmarks of the Vikings, were largely shaped by their constant battle with hunger, despite the hardships. There's a strange allure to the sea, the vastness, the power, the sense of pushing beyond the known world. It's intoxicating. When the sun finally breaks through after a storm, casting a golden light on the retreating waves, there's a profound sense of relief and accomplishment. You have faced the wrath of the elements and survived. This resilience, this ability to endure, is a defining characteristic of the Viking spirit, born not just of a desire for glory, but out of sheer necessity. You look at the children in the longhouse, skinny but still full of spirit. You know that it is your responsibility to ensure they have enough food to survive, so that they can grow up and continue this harsh cycle of life. Hunger is not just a personal threat. It is a threat to the survival of the entire family, the entire clan. The academic debate continues regarding the exact methods and tools Vikings used for long-distance navigation, with some scholars suggesting they may have had more advanced astronomical knowledge than previously thought, while others emphasize their reliance on more empirical, observational techniques. Regardless, their ability to cross vast stretches of open ocean with such rudimentary means remains a testament to their skill and daring. Ultimately, the specter of famine is a grim reminder that Viking life was not always glorious. It is a constant struggle for the most basic human needs, a battle that you cannot always win. You may be a fierce warrior, a skilled sailor, but against the power of a failed harvest or a long winter, all of that becomes meaningless. Your life is a testament to human resilience in the face of the harshest challenges, where every meal is a victory, and every day of survival is a quiet glory. You've endured the gnawing hunger that makes every winter a trial, and you've seen how the sheer struggle for survival can push a community to its limits. But even when the harvest is bountiful, and the longships return laden with plunder, peace is a fragile commodity. For in the Viking world, justice is not a distant, abstract concept administered by a powerful king or a centralized court. Instead, it is a deeply personal, often brutal affair, rooted in family honor, and the relentless cycle of feuds and vengeance. The glory of a warrior could quickly turn to ashes if their family's honor was stained, and the pursuit of justice often led to more bloodshed, not less. As the days turn into weeks, you become a seasoned sailor. Your body adapts to the constant motion. Your hands harden further, and your eyes learn to pick out the subtle signs of land on the distant horizon. The fresh water barrels are running low, and the dried provisions are becoming monotonous. But the promise of a new shore, of trade, or perhaps even a chance at glory, keeps you going. The destination, whether it's a bustling market town or an isolated monastery, represents a temporary reprieve from the relentless demands of the sea. And as the longship cuts through the waves, leaving a frothy wake behind, you understand that the true strength of a Viking lies not just in their axe, but in their ability to conquer the most formidable foe of all the untamed ocean. It's a bit like a really long, really cold road trip. But instead of snacks and podcasts, you have dried fish and the constant threat of drowning. You find yourself at the Thing, the local assembly where disputes are aired and laws are recited. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. Around you, free men, the carls, gather, their faces grim or expectant, depending on their stake in the day's proceedings. You stand among them, perhaps as a witness, or perhaps because a matter concerning your own kin is to be discussed. This communal gathering, a common historical fact, was the bedrock of Viking legal and political life, where decisions were made by consensus among free men rather than by a single ruler. Your longship finally beaches on a foreign shore, not for trade this time, but for a raid. The air crackles with a different kind of energy now, a tense mixture of anticipation and dread. Gone is the rhythmic creak of oars, replaced by the hushed whispers of your companions, the soft thud of boots on sand, and the metallic clink of weapons being readied. This is the moment you've been training for, the moment that promises wealth and renown, but also carries the grim potential for your very last breath. The glorious image of the Viking warrior, axe held high, charging fearlessly, is only one part of the story. The reality is far more visceral, far more terrifying. Today, the dispute is over a stolen cow, or perhaps a boundary marker moved in the night. It seems a small thing, a petty squabble, but in a world where survival hangs by a thread, every resource, every inch of land is vital. The aggrieved party, a farmer from a neighboring longhouse, stands before the assembled men, his voice tight with anger as he recounts his grievance. He demands restitution, or perhaps, if the offense is grave enough, a blood price. As you disembark, the cold, damp sand seeps into your worn leather boots. The sky is still bruised with the last vestiges of night, offering just enough gloom to conceal your approach. Your heart pounds a heavy rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat of adrenaline. You grip your axe, the familiar weight a small comfort in the face of the unknown. Around you, your shipmates move with a practiced silence, their faces grim, eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of life. This isn't a grand, heroic charge. It's a stealthy, calculated infiltration, designed to maximize surprise and minimize resistance. The laws, though unwritten in the way you understand them, are known to all. They are passed down orally, recited by law speakers, and understood through generations of tradition. Justice is not about abstract ideals of right and wrong, but about maintaining balance, about compensating for wrongs, and, crucially, about preserving honor. If a man's honor or his family's honor is slighted, it demands a response. To do nothing is to show weakness, to invite further insult. It's like a never-ending online comment section, but instead of down votes, you get an axe to the face. The target, a monastery or a small, unsuspecting village, lies ahead. You've heard tales of their riches, gold, silver, fine textiles, and, perhaps most importantly, food. But you've also heard tales of resistance, of unexpected traps, and of fierce, desperate defenders. The common historical fact that often gets romanticized is the sheer brutality of Viking raids. While they were undoubtedly effective, they were also chaotic, dangerous, and often resulted in significant casualties on both sides. This wasn't a clean, honorable battle. It was a desperate struggle for survival and plunder. The accused, if present, offers his defense, perhaps denying the deed, or offering a counter-accusation. The arguments can be heated, voices rising in anger, hands gripping weapon hilts. Tensions are always high, for a wrong word, a perceived insult, can quickly escalate a minor dispute into a deadly feud. You watch, your senses alert, ready to step back if the situation threatens to erupt into violence. As you advance, every shadow seems to hold a threat. The rustle of leaves, the distant bark of a dog, the sudden flight of a bird. Each sound sends a jolt of alarm through you. Your senses are heightened, your muscles coiled, ready to react. The cold, which was your constant companion on the sea, now feels like a dull ache compared to the icy grip of fear that begins to spread through your limbs. You might be a warrior, but you are also human, and the instinct for self-preservation is strong. A little-known detail about Viking law is the concept of outlawry. If a person committed a serious crime and refused to pay the agreed-upon compensation or submit to judgment, they could be declared an outlaw. This meant they lost all legal protection. Anyone could kill them without consequence, and they were forbidden from receiving aid or shelter from anyone. It was essentially a death sentence, forcing the individual to live a solitary, hunted existence in the wilderness. The first sign of life, a flickering light from a window, a wisp of smoke from a chimney, tightens the knot in your stomach. This is it, the moment of truth. The initial rush into the settlement is often the most dangerous. Sleep-addled villagers, startled from their slumber, might offer unexpected resistance. A farmer with a pitchfork can be just as deadly as a trained soldier in the chaos of a surprise attack. You move quickly, following the lead of your jarl or chieftain, your axe ready. If a resolution is reached, it often involves the payment of compensation, known as weregild or man price. Every injury, every loss, every life has a set value in silver or goods. The goal is to avoid further bloodshed by providing a financial settlement, but agreeing on the amount and ensuring its payment is often a fraught process. If the compensation is deemed insufficient, or if the guilty party refuses to pay, the aggrieved family has the right to seek vengeance. The sounds of the raid erupt around you, the terrified screams of the villagers, the clang of metal on metal, the shouts of your comrades. The air fills with the smell of smoke, fear, and blood. You find yourself in a desperate melee, your training kicking in, your movements fluid and instinctive. You swing your axe, parry a blow, and push forward. your eyes darting, seeking both targets and threats. There's no time for thought, only reaction. And this is where the cycle of feuds begins. If a kinsman is killed or a grave insult inflicted, the family of the victim is honor-bound to seek retribution. This is not a matter of choice. It is a sacred duty. You might find yourself drawn into a blood feud, not because you personally hate the other family, but because your family's honor demands it. You pick up your axe, sharpen your knife, and prepare for a deadly game of cat and mouse, where the stakes are life and death. Injuries are not a matter of if, but when. A glancing blow from a club, a shallow cut from a knife, a twisted ankle on uneven ground. These are the minor misfortunes. More serious wounds are common, deep gashes that bleed profusely, broken bones that twist limbs at unnatural angles, arrows piercing flesh with sickening thuds. There are no medics here, no sterile operating rooms, no painkillers beyond a swig of ale or the numbing shock of adrenaline. A severe wound can quickly become infected, leading to a slow, agonizing death long after the raid is over. Imagine trying to fight with a broken arm or a deep cut on your leg, knowing that infection is a far greater threat than any immediate enemy. It makes a paper cut seem like a minor inconvenience. The vengeance might take the form of a direct attack on a member of the offending family, an ambush on a lonely road, or a sudden assault on their longhouse. There are no rules of engagement beyond the unwritten code of honor. The goal is to inflict a wound, to take a life, to restore balance to the scales of justice. But each act of vengeance only fuels the next, creating an endless chain of retribution that can span generations. Imagine your family having a grudge against another family for centuries, passed down from great-great-grandparents, all because someone stole a sheep. It certainly makes your family arguments seem trivial. A little-known detail about Viking raids is the sheer logistical challenge of them. It wasn't just about showing up and taking things. Raiders had to consider intelligence gathering, timing, escape routes, and the ability to carry away their plunder. Often, they would target coastal areas or riverine settlements specifically because of the ease of access for their longships, allowing for quick strikes and even quicker retreats. This strategic planning, rather than just brute force, was key to their success. The fear of feuds is a constant shadow over your life. You must always be vigilant, always aware of who your family has wronged and who might be seeking retribution. You learn to trust few outside your immediate kin. Every stranger could be an enemy. Every distant figure on the horizon a potential threat. It breeds a deep-seated paranoia, a constant state of readiness for conflict. You might see a comrade fall, struck down by a desperate defender. There's no time to mourn, no time to help. You push past, your own survival paramount. The chaos is absolute, a swirling vortex of violence and desperation. You grab what you can, a silver chalice, a bolt of fine cloth, a sack of grain, stuffing it into your own meager pack. The goal isn't just to fight, it's to acquire wealth, to bring something back to your family, to prove your worth. The academic debate still rages about the precise role of feuds in Viking society. Were they a destabilizing force that ultimately weakened communities, or were they a necessary, albeit brutal, mechanism for maintaining order and dispensing justice in the absence of a strong, centralized authority? Scholars continue to analyze sagas and archaeological evidence, to understand the complex interplay of honor, law, and violence. The fear, which had been a dull ache, now sharpens into a keen edge. You realize how vulnerable you are, how easily your life could be extinguished in this maelstrom. You see the terror in the eyes of the villagers, a reflection of your own primal fear, though theirs is born of helplessness, yours of the constant threat of a counterattack. The screams of the dying, both friend and foe, echo in your ears, a chilling reminder of the stakes, even within your own family. Disputes can arise, inheritance, land boundaries, perceived slights. These can all lead to internal conflicts that, if not resolved, can splinter a family and weaken its ability to survive. The strength of your kin is your greatest asset, and internal strife is a dangerous weakness. You learn the importance of compromise, of mediation, of finding ways to cool tempers before they erupt into open conflict. The raid is often short, a brutal burst of activity. Once the initial resistance is broken and the most valuable goods secured, the order to retreat is given. You pull back, dragging your plunder, perhaps helping a wounded comrade, though many are left behind. The rush back to the longship is as frantic as the initial assault, driven by the fear of local levies or reinforcements arriving. You scramble aboard, your muscles screaming, your lungs burning, the weight of your spoils feeling impossibly heavy. The concept of holmgang, a formal duel, was a little-known detail that offered a way to settle disputes without escalating into a full-blown feud. Two individuals could agree to fight to the death or first blood, often on a small island or a designated area, with witnesses present. While brutal, it was a recognized legal mechanism to resolve certain grievances and prevent wider bloodshed. However, it was still a desperate measure, and not always available or agreed upon. As the longship pushes off from the shore, leaving behind the burning village and the cries of the survivors, a strange mix of emotions washes over you. There's the elation of survival, the grim satisfaction of having acquired wealth, but also a lingering sense of unease. The images of the raid, the faces of the terrified, the sounds of suffering, these will linger, perhaps haunting your dreams. The glory, if it exists at all, is fleeting, quickly overshadowed by the grim reality of what you have done and what you have endured. The cycle of vengeance could also be broken through negotiation and further payments. A powerful chieftain might step in to mediate, or a family might offer a larger weregild to finally put an end to the bloodshed. But this required both sides to be willing to compromise and to accept that the cost of continued fighting outweighed the satisfaction of vengeance. It was a difficult decision, often made only after significant losses on both sides. The journey back across the sea feels different now. The longship, once a symbol of adventure, now carries the weight of your actions. The cold, the seasickness, the monotonous food, these hardships are still present, but now they are compounded by the psychological burden of the raid. You might try to suppress the memories, to focus on the promise of the plunder, but the experience has left its mark. The impact of feuds on daily life is profound. You cannot travel freely for fear of ambush. You cannot trust outsiders for fear of betrayal. Your focus is constantly divided between the demands of survival and the need to protect your family from the next act of vengeance. It drains resources, both human and material, diverting energy from farming, trading, or raiding. A community embroiled in a long-standing feud is a weakened community, vulnerable to external threats. The academic debate still rages about the precise motivations behind Viking raids. Were they solely driven by a desire for wealth and land, or were there deeper societal pressures, such as population growth, political instability in Scandinavia, or even climate change, that pushed these people to seek their fortunes beyond their homelands? The answer is likely a complex interplay of all these factors, but the human cost, both for the raiders and the raided, was undeniable. The sagas, while often glorifying the exploits of warriors, also frequently depict the tragic consequences of feuds, showing how they could destroy families and lead to endless cycles of violence. They serve as a grim reminder that the pursuit of honor, when taken to its extreme, could be a destructive force, eroding the very fabric of society. It's like watching a reality TV show where everyone is constantly trying to one-up each other, but with actual swords and no commercial breaks. When you finally return home, you are greeted as a hero, a provider. Your family welcomes you, eager to hear tales of your exploits and to see the riches you've brought back. You might boast of your bravery, of the enemies you faced, of the treasures you acquired. But beneath the bravado, the scars remain, not just the physical ones, but the invisible ones etched onto your soul. You are richer, perhaps, but also changed, hardened by the violence you have witnessed and participated in. As you leave the thing, the dispute perhaps resolved for now, or perhaps merely postponed, you feel the weight of this system. You are part of it, bound by its rules and subject to its consequences. Your life is not just a personal journey. It is inextricably linked to the honor and fate of your kin. The pursuit of justice in the Viking Age is a harsh and unforgiving path, one that often leads to more sorrow than glory. And as you walk back to your longhouse, you cast a wary eye over your shoulder, knowing that the shadows might hold not just the cold, but the lingering threat of vengeance. You've navigated the treacherous waters of Viking justice, where honor is a shield and vengeance a sword, and you've seen how the cycle of feuds can consume families and communities. But beneath the harsh realities of daily survival, the constant threat of famine, disease, and conflict, lies another powerful force that shapes every aspect of your life, the gods. In the Norse world, the divine is not distant or abstract. It is a tangible, ever-present power that dictates the weather, influences harvests, determines the outcome of battles, and even whispers in your dreams. Your existence is a constant dance with the whims of these powerful, often capricious, deities, and their favor is sought with desperate fervor, for their displeasure can bring ruin. The plunder you bring back is essential for your family's survival, especially through the lean winter months. The silver can be melted down and crafted into jewelry or traded for essential goods. The textiles can be made into new clothing. The food, a rare luxury, will sustain your family. This is the tangible reward for the risks you took, the price of your survival in a harsh world. Remember that time you had to work overtime for a bonus. This is like that, but with more axes and less HR. You wake, and your first thought, even before the biting cold fully registers, is often of the gods. Perhaps you offer a silent prayer to Thor for strength to face the day's labor, or to Freya for a bountiful harvest from your meager fields. The sun rises, a daily miracle, and you see it not just as a celestial body, but as a gift from the gods, a sign of their continued, if sometimes grudging, benevolence. Every natural phenomenon, every stroke of luck, every misfortune is interpreted through the lens of divine intervention. This pervasive belief in a pantheon of active, involved gods is a common historical fact, deeply woven into the fabric of Viking society, influencing everything from farming practices to warfare. However, the consequences of raiding extend beyond the immediate aftermath. You have created enemies. The people you raided will remember, and they may seek vengeance. This constant threat of retaliation means you must always be vigilant, always ready to defend your own home from those who might seek to reclaim what was taken, or simply to exact their own brutal justice. The cycle of violence, once begun, is difficult to break. The world around you is alive with spirits and omens. The rustle of leaves in the wind might be the whisper of a forest spirit. The sudden flight of a raven could be a sign from Odin. The way the smoke curls from the longhouse hearth might foretell a visitor or a coming storm. You learn to read these signs, to interpret the subtle messages that the gods and spirits send, for they can offer guidance, warning, or a glimpse into the future. It's like living in a constant state of checking your horoscope, but instead of vague predictions about your love life, it's about whether you're going to survive the winter. You also carry the risk of disease from foreign lands. Contact with new populations means exposure to new pathogens, for which your community has no immunity. A seemingly minor illness picked up during a raid could sweep through your village upon your return, devastating your family and neighbors. This was a common, though often unrecorded, consequence of extensive travel and interaction in the Viking Age. Sacrifice is a fundamental part of your religious practice. You might offer a small portion of your harvest to the gods, leaving it at a sacred grove or by a standing stone. Animals might be sacrificed, their blood consecrating the ground, their meat shared in a communal feast to honor the deities. These acts are not about fear, but about reciprocity, about maintaining a good relationship with the powers that govern your world. You give to the gods, hoping they will give back in kind, a good harvest, a safe journey, victory in battle, the glory of a Viking raid. Then is a complex and often contradictory concept. It's the thrill of victory, the acquisition of wealth, the respect of your peers. But it's also the terror of battle, the pain of injury, the gnawing fear of death, and the lingering psychological toll of violence. You have faced the grim reality of warfare, and you have survived, but not without cost. As you settle back into the rhythm of daily life, the memories of the raid, sharp and vivid, serve as a constant reminder that being a Viking was far from all glory. It was a life lived on the edge, where every gain came with a significant price. The jarls and chieftains often act as religious leaders, performing rituals and interpreting omens for their communities. They might consult with seers or vulvas, wise women who possess the ability to communicate with the spirit world and foresee the future. These vulvas, often traveling from settlement to settlement, hold immense power and respect, their prophecies shaping decisions that affect entire clans. Imagine your local politician also being your spiritual advisor, and their campaign promises involve predicting the next big storm. It certainly adds a new layer to election season, while the longship cuts through the waves, carrying its warriors to distant shores and uncertain fates. Your life back home continues its relentless rhythm. the absence of the men, whether they are off raiding, trading, or exploring, doesn't mean a pause in the struggle for survival. In fact, for those left behind, the women, the children, the elderly, and the thralls, the challenges often intensify, becoming a silent, unsung battle against the elements, the land, and the ever-present anxiety of the unknown. This is the home front, the backbone of Viking society, and its reality is far from a peaceful idyll. A little-known detail about Norse religious practice is the significance of personal amulets and charms. While larger communal rituals were important, many Vikings carried small personal items, miniature Mjolnir Thor's hammer pendants, runic carvings, or even animal teeth, believing they offered protection, brought good luck, or connected them more directly to their chosen deities. These were not just ornaments. They were vital tools for navigating a world filled with unseen forces. You wake, as always, to the biting cold of the longhouse. But now there's an added quiet, a noticeable void where the boisterous voices of the men once filled the air. The longhouse feels emptier. The tasks ahead seem heavier. Your first thought is not of glory or plunder, but of the daily chores that must be done, regardless of who is present. The livestock still need tending, the fields still need working, and the fire still needs feeding. Life, in its most fundamental form, goes on. Death is not an end, but a transition. You believe in an afterlife, a realm where the brave warriors go to Valhalla, Odin's hall, to feast and fight until Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Others might go to Folkvanger, Freya's field, or to Hel, the realm of the dead. Your actions in life, your bravery, your honor, your adherence to the customs of your ancestors, these determine your fate in the afterlife. This belief system provides a framework for understanding death, offering solace and a sense of purpose to a life often cut short by violence or hardship. As a woman, the burden of managing the household falls squarely on your shoulders. You are the keeper of the hearth, the nurturer of the children, and the manager of resources. Every morning, you rise before dawn, the first to stir, to rekindle the embers and prepare the meager breakfast. The children, still sleepy-eyed, look to you for guidance and comfort. The elderly, with their wisdom and their frailties, also depend on your care. It's a demanding role, one that requires immense strength, resilience, and an unyielding will. The sagas and myths are not just stories. They are sacred texts, repositories of divine knowledge and moral lessons. You gather around the fire in the longhouse, listening to the tales of Odin's wisdom, Thor's strength, Freya's beauty, and Loki's cunning. These narratives shape your understanding of the world, of good and evil, of honor and betrayal. They provide role models, warnings, and a sense of connection to a larger cosmic drama, the fields, which were already a challenge with the men present, now seem even more daunting. If it's planting season, you spent hours bent over the earth, your back aching, your hands raw, pushing seeds into the thin, rocky soil. The hope for a good harvest is a fragile thing, constantly threatened by late frosts, heavy rains, or the ever-present possibility of drought. You watch the sky with a farmer's keen eye, praying to the gods for favorable weather, knowing that the survival of your family through the winter hinges on the success of these crops. This constant agricultural struggle is a common historical fact, while the image of the Viking warrior is dominant. The vast majority of the population were farmers, and their lives revolved around the seasons and the land. Omens and portents are taken seriously. A dream, a strange animal behavior, a sudden illness. These are not random occurrences, but messages from the gods. If a raven flies from the left, it might be a bad sign. If a wolf howls at the moon, it could signify impending conflict. You consult with elders, with those who have experience in interpreting these signs, seeking to understand the gods' will and to avoid their wrath. This constant vigilance against negative omens can add another layer of anxiety to an already stressful life. If it's harvest time, the work intensifies. Every grain, every root vegetable must be gathered, dried, and stored meticulously. You work from sunup to sundown, often with the help of your children, their small hands learning the rhythm of the harvest from a young age. The granaries must be filled, the root cellars stocked, the dried fish hung. There's no room for error. A spoiled batch of food could mean starvation when the snows begin to fall. It's a bit like trying to prepare for a year-long camping trip, but without any modern conveniences. And with the added pressure of knowing that if you mess up, everyone starves. Suddenly, meal prepping doesn't seem so bad. The academic debate still rages about the precise nature of Norse polytheism and whether it was a unified, coherent system across all Viking lands, or if there were significant regional variations and evolving beliefs. Scholars continue to analyze archaeological evidence, runic inscriptions, and sagas to reconstruct the complex tapestry of their spiritual world. Beyond the fields, the daily maintenance of the longhouse is a never-ending task. The turf roof needs repair. The walls need patching. The floors need sweeping. The animals, housed within the longhouse for warmth and protection, contribute to the pervasive odors and the constant need for cleaning. You spend hours spinning wool into yarn, the rhythmic hum of the spindle a constant backdrop to your thoughts. Then the weaving begins, a slow, painstaking process that transforms the yarn into the rough cloth needed for clothing, blankets and sails. Every stitch, every thread is a testament to your labor. When a storm rages, you see it as a manifestation of Thor's power, his hammer striking the clouds, his chariot rumbling across the sky. When the harvest is poor, you might interpret it as a sign of Freyr's displeasure, or a punishment from the Norns, the goddesses of fate. You don't question the gods' power. You seek to appease them, to understand their will, and to live in harmony with the forces they represent. Childcare is integrated into every aspect of your day. Infants are swaddled and carried, toddlers are kept close, and older children are put to work, learning the skills they will need to survive. There's no formal schooling, no designated playtimes. Learning is experiential, a continuous process of observation and participation. You teach your daughters to spin and weave, to cook and preserve food, to manage the household. You teach your sons the basics of farming, the care of animals, and perhaps, if you are a warrior's wife, the rudimentary skills of self-defense. The concept of word, or fate, is central to your worldview. You believe that your destiny is, to some extent, predetermined, woven by the Norns at your birth. However, this doesn't mean you are passive. You still have agency. You still make choices, and your bravery and honor can influence your fate, perhaps even allowing you to defy a grim prophecy. It's a delicate balance between accepting what is fated and striving to shape your own destiny. It's like believing in destiny, but still frantically refreshing your job application status. The emotional toll of the men's absence is profound. Every distant sail on the horizon brings a surge of hope, quickly followed by the crushing weight of disappointment if it's not their ship. You live with a constant, gnawing anxiety, wondering if they are safe, if they are well, if they will ever return. News travels slowly, if at all, and rumors can be cruel. A bad harvest, a sudden illness, a skirmish with a neighboring clan. Any of these could be devastating without the strength and protection of the men. It's like waiting for a text back from someone you're dating, but the text might never come, and your entire livelihood depends on it. Talk about high stakes. Magic, or cider, is also a recognized force. While some might dismiss it as superstition, many believe in the power of curses, blessings, and spells. Those who practice cider, particularly vulvas, are both revered and feared, their ability seen as a direct connection to the supernatural. You might seek their counsel for healing, for protection, or for insight into your future, but you also approach them with caution, knowing that their power can be dangerous if misused. A little-known detail about the Viking home front is the significant role women played in trade and commerce. While men were often the ones on long-distance voyages, women were frequently responsible for managing the family's economic affairs at home, including local trade, managing resources, and even acting as legal representatives in their husband's absence. They were not merely passive figures waiting for their men to return. They were active participants in the economic life of their communities. The conversion to Christianity, which slowly spread through the Norse lands, was a profound and often violent upheaval. You might witness the struggle between the old ways and the new as missionaries arrive, preaching a different God, a different afterlife, and a different set of moral rules. Some of your kin might embrace the new faith, seeing its promise of peace and salvation as an appealing alternative to the harsh realities of the old gods. Others cling fiercely to the traditions of their ancestors, seeing the new religion as a threat to their identity and their way of life. The threat of attack is always present. While the men are away, your settlement is more vulnerable. Other Viking groups, or even local enemies, might see your reduced numbers as an opportunity. You must remain vigilant, organizing lookouts, ensuring the few remaining able-bodied individuals are prepared to defend the longhouse if necessary. The fear of being raided yourself, of losing everything you have worked for, is a constant shadow. The clash of religions is not just a theological debate. It's a political and social struggle. Christian kings and chieftains seek to consolidate power, using the new faith as a unifying force. Old alliances are broken, new ones are forged, and sometimes blood is shed in the name of different gods. You might find yourself caught in the middle, forced to choose between the familiar comfort of your ancestral beliefs and the promises of a new, powerful religion. It's like your favorite local band suddenly going mainstream and changing their style, and you have to decide if you're still a fan. Community support becomes even more vital during these times. Neighbors help neighbors, sharing resources, labor, and comfort. If a family's harvest fails, others might share their meager stores. If someone falls ill, the community rallies to provide care. This interdependence is not just a social nicety, It's a matter of survival. The strength of the collective is often the only thing that stands between a family and destitution. Even as Christianity gains ground, elements of the old beliefs persist. Old customs, old superstitions, old ways of thinking continue to influence daily life. Even among those who claim to be Christian, the transition is slow and uneven, a gradual blending of old and new, rather than a sudden, complete abandonment of the past. The echoes of Odin and Thor can still be heard in the whispers of the wind, even in a land that has embraced the cross. The long, dark winters are particularly brutal. The cold intensifies, the days shorten, and the threat of hunger looms large. You spend more time indoors, huddled around the fire, stretching your dwindling food supplies. This is when the stories are told, the sagas recited, keeping spirits alive and transmitting the cultural heritage. But even the warmth of a good story can't fully banish the gnawing fear of starvation or the chilling grip of the cold. The gods, then, are not just figures in myths. They are an integral part of your daily reality. They are the source of both comfort and fear, of hope and despair. Their whims dictate your fortune. Their favor is essential for your survival. And as you navigate the challenges of Viking life, you do so with a constant awareness of the divine, knowing that your fate and the fate of your kin rests in the hands of powerful, unpredictable forces. It's a bit like living with a really strict, all-powerful parent who also controls the weather and your bank account. Good luck with that allowance. Disease is a constant companion, especially in the close quarters of the longhouse. A simple cold can turn into a deadly fever. A cut can become infected, leading to a lingering illness or even death. Without modern medicine, even minor ailments can become life-threatening. You rely on traditional remedies, on the knowledge passed down through generations. But often, all you can do is watch and pray. You've lived through the biting cold, the perilous seas, the brutal raids, the insidious grip of disease, the rigid chains of social hierarchy, the gnawing fear of famine, and the relentless cycle of feuds. You've navigated a world where the gods held sway, their whims shaping your destiny. Now, as the seasons turn and the years pass, you sense a different kind of shift. A slow but undeniable change in the very fabric of your world. The age of the Viking, as you have known it, is beginning to recede, replaced by new forces, new beliefs, and new challenges that demand adaptation or risk being left behind in the twilight of an era. The academic debate continues regarding the exact social status and power of women in Viking society. While they clearly held significant responsibilities on the home front and in economic matters, scholars still debate the extent of their formal political and legal authority, and how much their roles varied across different regions and social classes within the broader Norse world. You stand on the familiar shore, watching a longship being prepared. But this time, the atmosphere is different. There's less talk of raiding, more of trade. The men are still armed, but their expressions are less eager for battle, more focused on the goods they carry, furs, timber, perhaps even slaves. The common historical fact is that the Viking Age didn't end with a sudden, dramatic battle, but rather a gradual transformation. Raiding became less profitable and more dangerous as European kingdoms grew stronger and better organized, leading to a shift towards trade, settlement, and, ultimately, integration. When the longship finally returns, it's a moment of immense relief, tinged with apprehension. You scan the faces of the returning warriors, searching for your loved ones, praying they are among them. The sight of them, even if weary and scarred, brings a wave of profound gratitude. The plunder they bring is a welcome sight, a tangible reward for the risks they took and the hardships you endured. It's a moment of reunion, of shared stories, and of a brief respite from the constant struggle. The whispers of a new God, the white Christ, grow louder. You've heard the missionaries, seen the crosses, and perhaps even witnessed some of your own kin. Even a jarl embrace this new faith. They speak of peace, of a single, all-powerful deity, of a heaven that is open to all, not just fallen warriors. It's a stark contrast to the pantheon of gods you've always known, with their feuds, their unpredictable nature, and their demand for sacrifice. This religious shift is not just a matter of belief. It's a profound cultural and political upheaval that reshapes alliances and changes the very way people think about the world. Imagine your entire worldview, passed down through generations, suddenly being challenged by a new ideology that promises a better afterlife if you just stop doing all the fun, violent stuff. It's a tough sell, but the return of the men doesn't mean the end of your labors. The household still needs managing, the children still need tending, and the cycle of seasons continues. The men bring their own burdens, injuries, trauma, and the lingering effects of their experiences, which you must also help them bear. The home front is not just a place of waiting, it's a place of constant work, of quiet strength, and of unwavering dedication to the survival of the family and the community. The kingdoms to the south, once easy targets for your raids, are growing stronger. They have built formidable fortifications, organized standing armies, and developed more sophisticated defenses, raids, which once brought easy plunder, now come with a much higher cost in lives and ships. You hear tales of expeditions returning with heavy losses, their holds empty, their warriors weary and disheartened. The risk-reward balance has shifted, making the glorious life of a raider less appealing and far more deadly. You might find yourself looking at your returning husband, brother, or son, and seeing not just the glorious warrior of legend, but the weary man who has faced unimaginable perils. You understand the true cost of their glory, because you have paid a price yourself. In endless labor, in gnawing anxiety, and in the quiet, uncelebrated strength that keeps the hearth burning and the family alive. The home front is where the true resilience of the Viking people is forged, in the daily, unyielding struggle against a world that demands everything and gives little in return. It's a bit like running a small business, managing a large family, and constantly being on call, all without a phone or a coffee machine. Truly, the unsung heroes of the Viking Age were often those who stayed behind. Instead of raiding, you find yourself engaging more in trade. Your longship, once a symbol of terror, now carries goods to distant markets. You exchange furs for silver, timber for fine textiles, and fish for grain. You learn new languages, new customs, and new ways of doing business. The bustling market towns of Europe, once places to be plundered, are now places to be negotiated with. It's a different kind of battle, one fought with words and weights, not axes and shields. And let's be honest, haggling over the price of a walrus tusk can be just as exhausting as a skirmish, but with far less chance of losing a limb. You've survived the biting cold of the longhouse, the perilous journey across the sea, and the brutal reality of a raid. You might feel a sense of invincibility, a hardened resilience forged in the crucible of a Viking life. But there's an enemy far more insidious than any human foe, one that lurks in the shadows of your longhouse, in the stagnant water of the village well, and in the very air you breathe. This enemy is sickness, and in the Viking Age, it was a constant, terrifying companion, often far more deadly than a warrior's axe. The glory of battle fades quickly when your body is racked with fever, or a simple cut festers into a death sentence. Settlement becomes a more attractive option than raiding. You hear of Norse communities flourishing in new lands, in England, in Ireland, in Normandy, and even across the vast ocean in Greenland and Vinland. These are not just temporary camps. They are permanent homes, with farms, churches, and established laws. Your kin, who once sought plunder, now seek land to cultivate, a place to raise their families without the constant threat of the sea or the demands of the raid. This widespread settlement, a common historical fact, transformed the Norse from raiders into colonizers and integrated them into the broader European landscape. You wake one morning not to the usual aches of labor, but to a deeper, more unsettling pain. Your head throbs, your throat feels raw, and a chill, deeper than any winter cold, shivers through your bones. You try to rise, but your limbs feel heavy, unresponsive. This is the insidious start of an illness, a common historical fact that often goes unmentioned in tales of Viking prowess. Life expectancy was brutally short, and disease, not battle, was the primary killer for most people in this era. The very concept of what it means to be a Viking begins to change. The fierce, independent warrior, sailing off to plunder, slowly gives way to the farmer, the trader, the craftsman, the settler. The distinct Norse identity begins to blend with the cultures of the lands they settle in. You might see your children or grandchildren speaking a new language, wearing different clothes, and worshiping a different god. The old ways, while still cherished, are slowly fading, becoming tales told around a dwindling fire. The longhouse, usually a source of warmth and comfort, now feels oppressive. The smoke, which once offered a familiar scent, now stings your eyes and makes your cough worse. The close quarters, which fostered community, now become a breeding ground for contagion. If one person falls ill, it's only a matter of time before the sickness spreads through the entire family, sometimes the entire village. Imagine trying to isolate yourself when your bed is shared, and your entire life happens in one large, communal room. It's like trying to avoid a cold when you're living in a giant, open-plan office with no hand sanitizer. A little-known detail is the significant role of intermarriage in this process of integration. Norse settlers often married local women, and their children grew up with a blend of both cultures, speaking both languages, and often adopting aspects of both religious traditions. This cultural fusion was a powerful force in the gradual assimilation of the Norse into the societies they settled in, blurring the lines between Viking and native. Your family gathers around you, their faces etched with concern. They offer what remedies they know, herbal concoctions brewed from plants gathered in the wild, warm broths, perhaps a poultice made from moss or bark applied to your feverish brow. These are the wisdom of generations, passed down through oral tradition, but their effectiveness is often limited. You might feel a temporary comfort, a fleeting sense of relief, but the underlying illness often persists, its grip tightening with each passing hour. The political landscape back home in Scandinavia is also changing. Powerful kings are emerging, consolidating smaller chieftaincies into larger, more centralized kingdoms. The things, once the primary forum for justice and lawmaking, begin to lose some of their power as royal authority grows. Laws become more formalized, justice more centralized, and the old cycle of feuds, while not entirely gone, is slowly being curtailed by the authority of the crown. You might find yourself subject to a king's decree, rather than the consensus of your peers, a new kind of chain, perhaps less visible than thraldom, but no less binding. The fever intensifies, plunging you into a restless delirium. You drift in and out of consciousness, your dreams filled with distorted images of longships on stormy seas, of the clang of steel, of the faces of loved ones. Your body aches, every joint protesting, every muscle screaming. You sweat profusely, then shiver uncontrollably, caught in the relentless cycle of the fever. Your throat is so dry it feels like sandpaper, and every swallow is an agony. The military tactics evolve. The hit-and-run raids of the early Viking age are replaced by larger, more organized armies, often employing cavalry and siege warfare. The longship, while still vital for transport, becomes less of a weapon of terror and more of a logistical tool. If you choose to continue the warrior's path, you find yourself fighting in larger campaigns, often as mercenaries for foreign kings, rather than as independent raiders. The glory of individual combat is replaced by the grim realities of large-scale warfare. A little-known detail about Viking medicine is their surprising knowledge of herbal remedies and basic surgical procedures. Archaeological finds and sagas suggest they used various plants for their medicinal properties, and there's evidence of rudimentary bone setting and even trepanation drilling holes in the skull, though the success rates for such procedures were, understandably, low. Still, it speaks to a practical approach to healing in a world without modern medical science. The academic debate still rages about the precise reasons for the decline of the Viking Age. Was it primarily due to the rise of stronger European states, the adoption of Christianity, the exhaustion of raiding opportunities, or perhaps internal political changes within Scandinavia itself? Most scholars agree it was a combination of factors, a complex interplay of internal and external pressures that gradually brought an end to an era. Beyond the common fevers and colds, other ailments are a constant threat. Dysentery, caused by contaminated water or food, can sweep through a settlement, dehydrating and weakening its victims until they waste away. Parasites, from contaminated meat or poor hygiene, can infest your gut, leading to chronic discomfort and nutrient deficiencies. Skin infections, from cuts and scrapes that turn septic, can spread rapidly, leading to painful abscesses or even blood poisoning. A simple thorn prick, if left untreated, could be the beginning of the end. The world is becoming smaller, more interconnected. New trade routes are established, new ideas spread, and the isolation that once defined your homeland begins to erode. You hear of distant lands, of grand cathedrals, of powerful empires, and you realize that your world, once seemingly boundless, is just one small part of a much larger tapestry. It's like realizing your small, tight-knit community is actually just a tiny dot on a global map, and everyone else has already figured out how to use the internet. Imagine the pain of a toothache in this era. There are no dentists, no painkillers beyond raw courage or a strong drink. A decaying tooth would simply rot, causing agonizing pain, until it either fell out or became so infected that it led to a more widespread illness. You might try to pull it out yourself, or have a desperate friend attempt it, using crude tools and even cruder methods. It's enough to make you appreciate your regular dental checkups. The old gods, while still revered by some, begin to lose their grip. The sagas, once vibrant living histories, become tales of a bygone era. The rituals become less frequent, the sacrifices less common. The Christian Church, with its organized structure and its promise of eternal salvation, offers a new kind of comfort and order in a world that is rapidly changing. You might find yourself attending a new church, listening to a different kind of sermon, and learning to pray to a different God. A quiet revolution happening within your own soul. Injuries, whether from battle, accident, or daily labor, are another major source of suffering. A broken bone, if not set correctly, could heal improperly, leaving you with a permanent limp or a deformed limb, rendering you unable to work or fight. A deep cut from an axe or a knife, even if it doesn't immediately kill you, could become infected with terrifying speed. Without antibiotics, even a minor bacterial infection could spread, leading to gangrene and the need for amputation, if such a drastic measure was even possible. The academic debate still rages about the specific surgical techniques employed by Viking healers, and how effective they truly were in preventing infection and promoting healing. The skills that once guaranteed survival, farming, fishing, shipbuilding, warfare, remain essential. But their context changes. A skilled smith might now forge tools for a Christian monastery instead of weapons for pagan raid. A master shipbuilder might now construct merchant vessels instead of warships. The adaptability of your people, their ability to learn and embrace new ways, is what allows them to survive this transition. Childbirth is a perilous journey for both mother and child. Without modern medical care, complications are common, and both infant and maternal mortality rates are tragically high. You see mothers struggle and sometimes succumb, leaving behind grieving families. You see infants, born frail or prematurely, fight for their lives in the harsh environment of the longhouse, often losing the battle within days or weeks. The joy of a new birth is always tempered by the knowledge of how fragile life truly is. You might feel a sense of nostalgia for the old days, for the wild freedom of the raid, for the clear-cut honor of battle. But you also recognize the benefits of the new era, more stable communities, less constant fear of feuds, and perhaps even a longer, more peaceful life. The choice is often not between good and bad, but between the familiar and the necessary. The very air you breathe in the longhouse, thick with smoke and the exhalations of many bodies, contributes to respiratory illnesses. Constant exposure to smoke from the hearth can lead to chronic coughs, lung problems, and a weakened immune system, making you more susceptible to other infections. It's a subtle, pervasive threat that slowly erodes your health over time. As the sun sets on the Viking Age, you are left with a legacy that is far more complex than the simple image of the axe-wielding warrior. You are part of a people who were explorers, traders, settlers, and warriors, who shaped the course of European history and who ultimately adapted to a changing world. Your life, once defined by the raw struggle for survival and the fleeting pursuit of glory, now finds new purpose in the building of communities, the cultivation of land, and the forging of new identities. Mental health, while not understood in the same terms as today, was undoubtedly impacted by the harsh realities of Viking life. The constant stress of survival, the trauma of raids, the loss of loved ones, the gnawing fear of famine and disease. These would have taken a heavy toll on the mind. There were no therapists, no support groups. You relied on the resilience of your spirit, the comfort of your community, and perhaps the solace of your gods. But for many, the burden would have been overwhelming. The twilight of this era is not an ending, but a transformation. The Viking spirit, that blend of resilience, daring, and adaptability, doesn't vanish. It simply finds new forms, new outlets. And as you look out at the horizon, no longer scanning for enemy longships, but for the promise of a new dawn, you understand that the true glory of your people lies not just in their conquests, but in their enduring capacity to change, to grow, and to build a future in a world that never stops evolving. It's like your favorite band finally matures and starts making music that's actually good for you, even if you still secretly miss their angry punk phase. Well, that's our journey through a Viking life. From the bitter cold of the longhouse to the storms of the sea, from the brutality of raids to the fear of famine and disease, we've seen that life isn't easy. It's a constant struggle, where glory is often a fleeting moment compared to the harsh realities of survival. As the illness progresses, your strength wanes. The world outside the longhouse seems distant, unreal. You hear the sounds of daily life, the lowing of cattle, the shouts of children, the clang of a hammer, but they seem to float to you from another realm. Your focus narrows to the immediate sensations, the burning heat of your skin, the dryness of your mouth, the relentless ache in your bones. You are entirely dependent on your family, on their care, on their hope that you will recover. You've experienced the resilience of a farmer, the bravery of a sailor, and the tenacity of a survivor. You've seen how social structures, beliefs in the gods, and the changing times have shaped every aspect of your life. Hopefully, this story has given you a deeper, more authentic insight into what it really meant to live in the Viking era. Beyond the often romanticized images, sometimes the illness breaks, the fever recedes, the pain lessens, and you slowly begin to regain your strength. The first sip of clear, cold water feels like a miracle. The first solid food, though bland, tastes like a feast. You emerge from the shadow of sickness, weakened but alive, with a renewed appreciation for the simple act of breathing without pain. This recovery, however, is often slow and arduous, leaving you vulnerable to relapse or other complications. Now, as the images of smoky longhouses, gliding longships, and the calloused faces of Vikings fade into the night, let your mind rest. Let the sounds of this story drift into your sleep, bringing you peace and quiet. It is late at night, but sometimes the illness wins. You feel your breath growing shallow, your heart slowing. The faces of your family blur, their voices fading into a distant hum. The cold, which has been your lifelong companion, now seems to welcome you, drawing you into a deeper, more profound sleep from from which there is no waking. Your journey ends not on a glorious battlefield, but quietly, in the smoky confines of your longhouse, surrounded by those who loved you. This grim reality is a stark contrast to the romanticized image of a warrior dying with an axe in hand, bound for Valhalla. For most, death was a quiet, often painful affair. The body, once life has departed, is prepared for burial or cremation according to the customs of your family and clan. The rituals are solemn, a final farewell to a life lived hard and often short. Your earthly possessions might be buried with you, or placed on a pyre, a symbolic journey into the afterlife. The grief of your loved ones is real, but also pragmatic. Life must continue, and the living must endure. The constant presence of disease shaped Viking society in profound ways. It influenced settlement patterns, trade routes as new diseases were introduced, and even religious beliefs, as people sought divine intervention to ward off illness. It underscored the fragility of life and the importance of community support in times of crisis. Remember how you worried about getting the flu. Imagine if the flu could literally end your entire lineage. It certainly puts things in perspective. Ultimately, the reality of Viking ailments strips away much of the romantic veneer of the era. It highlights the sheer tenacity required simply to survive, to endure the constant onslaught of unseen enemies that could fell even the strongest warrior. Your life, then, is not just a tale of adventure and glory, but a testament to the human spirit's capacity to persevere in the face of relentless suffering and the ever-present shadow of death. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to a time when the mere mention of a longship on the horizon sent shivers down spines across Europe. We're going to explore the life of a Viking, not the glorious, axe-wielding, horned, helmet-wearing spoiler. They didn't wear horned helmets into battle warrior of legend, but the gritty, often brutal, and undeniably challenging reality of daily existence. Imagine, if you will, the biting wind whipping across your face, the smell of wood smoke and unwashed wool clinging to your clothes, and the constant, gnawing worry about where your next meal will come from. This isn't a fantasy epic. It's a stark look at what it truly meant to live, and often die, as a Norseman or Norsewoman. And let's be real, if you were actually there, you probably wouldn't survive past Tuesday. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment below and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stir, not to the gentle chime of an alarm clock, but to the insistent, frigid grip of the pre-dawn air seeping through the cracks of your longhouse. Your bed is a simple, straw-filled pallet, shared with siblings, perhaps even a few farm animals seeking warmth. The smell of stale smoke, damp earth, and unwashed bodies is pervasive, a constant companion in this cramped, communal living space. As your eyes adjust to the gloom, you can just make out the silhouettes of your family members, still huddled under rough wool blankets, their breaths misting in the cold. There's no central heating here, no instant coffee, no quick scroll through social media to ease into the day. Your very first thought is likely about the cold, and then, immediately, about food.